Welcome to GRC. Thanks for tuning in to this session. I'm going to talk to you all today about the thermometer model and what it has to do with translation. The thermometer model was established by a business school professor by the name of Scott Galloway. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Nolan and I'm the Director of Customer Success here at Smartling. I've been at Smartling for 7 years and I've been working in the translation industry for a little over 15 years, starting with my studies in translation back in Ireland, where I am originally from. It's great to be with you all today and I hope you enjoy the session. The thermometer model helps you to understand if your business is local or global, or rather how local or how global your business is. It's a really interesting concept and very relatable to localization and marketing professionals for thinking about how you should adopt your products and brand for international markets. So before we get started, let's do a quick poll. For those of you tuning in, I'd love to know, is your business local or global? Go ahead and post your answers into the chat. We'll give you a few minutes to get them in there. I do have a hypothesis here, but I'm going to reserve my comments to the chat thread. When developing your global brand and localization programs, you have to make a decision about what content and experiences will be managed centrally by HQ and fixed across regions versus what should be owned by local teams and be given a more local flavor. This impacts every business. While larger enterprises will have a more complex set of requirements, any business that has a global presence has to think about how to manage the way every brand touchpoint will impact their end user experience. Some examples include your website, blog, chats, social media, case studies, product tours, and the list goes on. And since every team across the business is contributing to the user experience, understanding what will be managed globally versus locally is relevant to everyone that you work with. That's where the thermometer model comes in. The thermometer model was established by Professor Scott Galloway, who is one of the foremost business school professors around the world. The thermometer model codifies how a company controls its experience on the global level. While it's presented by Professor Galloway as a means to control brand touchpoints, I think it can also be easily applied to how you think about managing translation. Many of you are already customizing how you approach each market, and I believe this will help you to better communicate internally and lead with a framework to make decisions. The model looks at all of the relevant attributes of a brand's operations, from the name, logo, product, distribution, price, and communication, all of the key elements of a brand. The freezing point defines what will be managed globally and what will be managed locally by the brand. Brands with high freezing points typically mean a globally managed brand. Luxury brands are a really good example here. Luxury brands typically have high freezing points. Since they have a more limited product selection with higher price points, the price is often set by the brand and doesn't change by region. And oftentimes, the way that they promote, support, or sell a product is the same no matter where they are in the world. On the flip side, brands that have a lower freezing point would equate to locally managed brands. It's important to take advantage of local flavor. So let's go ahead and look at a few examples of brands with different freezing points and their approach. First, we have Apple. Apple is certainly a very well-known brand across the world. While it is an everyday product for many people, it can verge on luxury due to the price point and prestige of its products. Apple's freezing point is around the pricing mark, meaning they have a high freezing point. The price range is similar across the world. However, as a global company, they rightly localize and communicate their prices in the local currency. They communicate the product itself the same with imagery, but localize that image accordingly for each market. As you can see in this slide, the difference in seconds on the Spanish image compared to the UK and US imagery. In the US, they show the price in dollars. In the UK, they show the price in pounds. And in Spain, they show the price in euros. Another example is Dunkin' Donuts. You'll see they haven't frozen the products. Rather, they have introduced custom products by region, thus compressing the freezing point. So in China, you would have a dried pork donut. In Japan, you would have a mochi ring donut. And in Bulgaria, you can get a Mozart donut. I looked a few of these up, and the pork donut is covered in dried pork and sometimes paired with dried seaweed crumbles. The Mozart donut is filled with chocolate frosting and then decorated with nougat icing and chocolate bonbons. I certainly know which one of these I would try. Go ahead and post into the chat. What would you try? Okay, so back to the thermometer model. Now that you have some more context, how would you change your response, or would you change your response to your first question, and what would that be? Is your brand local or is your brand global? Okay, so what does this all have to do with localization? It really does have everything to do with localization. Though it may not be clearly written in your job description, the role of localization teams is to unlock global revenue. The best-in-class localization teams think about how their brand will perform best in any given region and then make strategic recommendations to the company so their products and services feel like they were built specifically for the consumer in each market. Okay, now let's talk about how you can apply this framework to your company. You can apply this framework in 3 easy steps. First, you have to identify what's above the freezing point. In other words, what elements of your brand or content is managed locally. Then you have to identify what's below the freezing point, or said another way, what's set by HQ and what's disseminated globally. There are a handful of attributes to the translation process that you may also want to consider adding to your own thermometer model, such as, is your source content managed locally or centrally? Are your translations managed centrally, or does each region make the decision around what to translate? Is the budget for translation set globally, or is it set locally? It's important to keep one thing in mind as you develop this framework for your business. The lower the freezing point, the more customization that is required. And customization typically means investment. So that's where the third element of this framework comes in. Cost-benefit analysis. A cost-benefit analysis will offer you and your team some guardrails. It will help you answer whether or not the time and cost involved with creating a local experience is worth the expected revenue. What's interesting about translation and localization with Smartling is that you actually have a lot of flexibility in how you think about the cost benefit of translating content. Depending on what you're trying to do in each market, you can use this framework to establish guidelines for what type of translation you should use based off the expected return or value of the user experience you're looking to support. It's important to note that your answer to this question probably will change over time, and having the flexibility to pivot is critical. Once you have established this framework for your business, you will need to drive this conversation internally. You'll need to drive it internally with your colleagues and cross-functionally. Work with your marketing and product teams to ensure alignment, and ultimately use this as a way of setting up rules for how to evaluate the level of investment you make in each region. I really hope you enjoyed listening to this introduction to the thermometer model and how it applies to translation. I hope you'll find it useful for your planning and taking your brand global. We'd love to hear your feedback, and thank you for listening.